Today, we complete our position preview series. David Walker joins us to talk about the center spot. Mark Williams, can he stay healthy? And where can he ascend to his third year in the league? We'll get to all of it today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your pods, and that does include YouTube. Today's episode, get ready, David, is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time? Download. That was perfect. That was fantastic. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. There's Doug Branson as always. Find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3. And there's David. You can follow him on Twitter at David B. Walker. He's dodging the Miles Bridges conversation from yesterday, but he's coming on to talk Mark Williams in the center spot.
We almost had you.
I'm quiet quitting on you guys.
We almost had you. I knew because you didn't know that we were going to talk power forwards yesterday, and then you called and canceled, and I was like, oh, man.
Probably ends the streak for how many times that we've talked Miles with you on the pod, but
it's a new day. It's a new season, guys. Come on.
I did want to say real quickly, I said this to Doug when we did the episode after you guys did the one last week with, me having zero power. But Eddie Jones, most underrated, totally with it. I think you nailed it, David. Love Eddie Jones being the most underrated guy on the Hornets grid. So we finished the Hornets grid. Now we have to finish the stat draft before we get to the season. Like we got basically like a few more projects, but we're going to finish one more for sure, and we're going to do that at the end of today's show.
I'm proud of us.
I am too. Like only one unfinished homework assignment. Like that's not bad. We always have next off season. So we'll just get to who wore it best next offseason. That will go from the span of like 2021 to 2025. It will be ridiculous. Let's get to the center spot. Mark Williams, big question there, right? Yeah. Okay. If health is the biggest question surrounding all these guys, I guess we go to the second biggest question. Second biggest question. For me, David, we'll start with you, but I'll kick it off with the question. Can he continue to improve and end the season better than where he started? Because that was my big thing about him all throughout college, his freshman year, his sophomore year, his rookie campaign, Greensboro, right? And he starts his rookie season with the Swarm, balls out, gets called up to the big leagues, shows you a ton of promise. Every single time. The guy just gets better and better. And like separate from the health, there were some questions last year, but we got the Boston Celtics game. We got these out. We got some, not even like, oh, nice flashes. We got some, oh, you could be a force flashes. The block on Trae Young, where you get out on the perimeter at that size, block Trae, and then go coast to coast. There are some real fun things from Mark. We just got to keep him on the floor, and we got to keep him out there with LaMelo, David. How excited are you about what Mark could do year 3?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. I mean, staying healthy for Mark Williams is huge, and you just feel like he hasn't gotten a full runway and then a chance to take off throughout an entire season. Only 19 games last season? I mean, that's just nothing. That's a total lost season. But the per 36 numbers were there, and you could see the improvement coming. So you just want him to be able to build off of that, man, and you want him to be able to be on the floor with better players, namely LaMelo, but the other guys are surrounding him with. And right now there's not much left behind him. I know we'll get into that a little bit with the overall center position, but like it really does hinge a lot on him, because right now you've got Nick Richards. That's pretty much it, and we'll see what happens in light of that. But Mark Williams is a huge piece of this, and they're also clearly positioning him to be, the third guy, maybe the third and a half guy, you know what I mean? Depending on how you put Miles Bridges in this discussion these days. So he's a big piece. And I think that's what people around the league, you heard Zach Lowe mention him. He had a conversation with him. When they look at the Hornets, they look for the success to line up with Mark Williams continuing to improve and be a presence there on the court. So, yeah, it all comes down to health, I think, as we know, because I think he's willing to put the work in. When he's on the floor, you can see what a difference he makes for this team. And it would just be exciting if you could add a constant presence and a young guy down there that really, really still has a lot in front of him if he can stay healthy.
What do you think, Doug?
I don't think that we can necessarily like skip over the health issues. I know it's sort of what you want to do because the whole team wasn't healthy. And so, we could say health for so many of these guys, but I think Mark's is unique for a few reasons. One, because last season was a back injury, and back injuries and centers are always something that make the hair stand up on the back of your neck, that make you seize up, a lot like a back injury, because those can be career shorteners or even career enders for centers. And so that scares me. The vagueness of the back injury, the idea that they kept trying to ramp him up. Similar to Cody Martin, they tried to ramp him up, and when they did so, there would be setbacks along the way that kept him from getting back into the lineup. So all of that scares me. And then on top of that, this offseason, I feel like there hasn't been someone that's come out and said, we are 1,000% confident in Mark Williams' health. He is right. He is. I mean, and they've done that before with LaMelo, with other guys. They've been very explicit about he is 100% ready to go, healthy as can be, healthy as his rookie season. That has not been the vibes around Mark Williams. It's been So all of that worries me a little bit. On top of that, the Hornets continue to explore depth options at the center position. And while I appreciate that as someone that has been begging them to do that when their centers were healthy, because you got to go into a season assuming that there are going to be injuries here and there and have some depth at really every position, but particularly if you want to be a good defensive team at the center position, and the Hornets have not done that traditionally. So while I appreciate that, when you combine that with the idea that Mark may or may not be 100% healthy, I'm frightened. I'm terrified. I'm scared.
Yeah, I'm scared too. I like the word being vague here because there's not a lot of clarity on Mark Williams. I also don't think that there's been a lot of hiding him. I mean, he's been out. They've gone to a bunch of different places, going to the Celtics playoff games. I think that clearly shows that they want him to be a part of this core. And I think there's one decision we don't talk about enough that shows they care about Mark Williams going into the future. And it's not drafting Donovan Clangin when they had the shot to, because they took a roll of the dice with Tijan Salon, and they didn't draft a guy that was clearly highly coveted. We're even fielding calls for some teams to come down to their spot to possibly select Donovan Clangin. And they said, no, we like Salon better, but man, Clangin was right there too. And if you were really that scared about Mark Williams, then you have to add one, center depth, but also a guy that pushes Mark for a starting spot, if not at the beginning of this year, just because of the experience factor. Maybe he pushes Mark at the end of the season, gets Wally pipped because of the health factor too. We saw in the Hornets episode with all the real access, Jeff Peterson in the draft table. Like, I don't know how much of it was put on, right? Like, some of it might have just been emphasized for the camera. Not fake, but emphasized for the camera. But we saw Jeff say, we can't not if we think Donovan Clangin is the best player at this spot, we got to take him, right? If we think player X is the best player at this spot, well, we have to take him despite what kind of player we already have at his position. So I think that's a big deal. And for most of the signs that we've seen, Mark is the guy going forward. Doug is laughing. Why are you laughing?
Because I think he said that because the cameras were on. He knew the cameras were on. You got to say the thing. You say the thing, right? I don't think that's
But the action is the big deal more so than the comment to me. The action is the big deal.
So here's what I think, and this is some speculation that's guided by some educated guessing and some things that I've heard in whispers. So
okay. We going like with borderline sauces?
No source. No, I can't go. I'm not all the way to sources yet, or sauces. I think that they are not 100% sure on what's going to happen when they go full speed with Mark Williams, game type of intensity And that's really what this is all about. They can't come out and say, yeah, he's 100% because they're not sure he's 100%. And they really the only way to test that is to do what they've been trying to do all last season, which is ramp it up to full speed and see what happens. And it is a scary proposition. I mean, we're going to talk about the depth at this position. They do have someone that has a lot of starter experience now because of last season, Nick Richards. But the Hornets team without Mark Williams defensively, I don't care that they added Josh Green. I don't care what improvements LaMelo Ball makes. I don't care what improvements Brandon Miller makes. If they don't have Mark Williams anchoring the middle, the cap on what they can do this season, both defensively and overall, is severely lowered.
Yeah. So did you guys discuss the Harry Giles signing at the beginning of the week? I saw some people worried that might be an impactful thing or might be because they're scared of Mark not being fully ready. But to me, like, I'm not sure that Harry Giles impacts Mark Williams or Nick Richards a ton at this point, just given that he hasn't, played a bunch.
So we mentioned him in yesterday's position preview, and our analysis on Harry Giles was Harry Giles.
Harry Giles.
Right, exactly. Okay, good.
Listen, if you're concerned about injuries to your center position,
that's true. Maybe Harry Giles is not the best addition.
Right. You can't draw that line because Harry Giles has been chronically injured. You're hoping that turns around massively for him.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get to the depth part of the conversation coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Yes. We have more Mark Williams thoughts. It's scary. The first time you hear it, it's scary. We have more Mark Williams thoughts. Then we'll get to the depth at the center spot. It's coming up next, LOH. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Maybe you're feeling a little froggy, watching the Red Rifle tear the Raiders up. They got the Bengals. The Panthers have a better record than their opponent this weekend against the Cincinnati Bengals. At home, okay, around a 5-point dog, maybe a live dog. I don't know. I'm just saying, Panthers, if you want to get a little froggy, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet with FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. More Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, let's finish some thoughts on Mark Williams, the player, real quick. What his strengths, his weaknesses, the offensive rebounding percentage through the roof last year. I don't even know if about a surprise. It was like, I guess I didn't expect him to be, the best in the league at it when he was on the floor. That was nice to see. Second chance opportunities. Rebounding numbers weren't terrible defensively for Mark Williams either, but we saw him get out physical at times. And so small sample size still, David, you alluded to it. Pretty much a lost season for him. We did not see him shoot at all away from the basket. It was all like 3 feet in. We actually saw a little more from him in that regard his rookie season. We thought maybe he would extend that range out to the 3-point line. Never happened. We have the take the over on 10 threes from Mark, both now from Mark himself 2 years ago, and Charles this offseason. Charles Lee said take the over on the 10 threes. So we'll see if he extends his range.
Is that allowed, by the way? Is that allowed? Did he say take the over?
He did, actually. Actually, that's a thing that he did.
I'm not trying to rat out the coach here. I mean, this is a Hornets podcast. I don't want to rat the coach out, but I don't know if that's totally legal.
At least he did it himself. He said it on the Wes and Walker show. You can catch it 12-3 WFNZ. But he said, take the over on Mark Williams 10 3-point shots. So there you go. But
you gotta bet the bus.
I'm with it. I'm with it. So with Mark, there's a lot to like defensively. They care a lot about protecting the rim. That's clearly what they're going to ask Mark to do. I think that's going to be a defensive calling card for this squad. And nobody can really have the ceiling like Mark does. We've seen Nick with some actually pretty good protecting the rim advanced metrics, but Mark is the guy with the crazy standing reach and the athleticism, the intelligence to be where he's supposed to be, the rim deterrence where guys just don't want to mess with the big crazy long arm dude down low because it might just get blocked and swatted into the fifth row. Yeah, like all of that is what Mark can bring to the table.
Yeah, and not to mention, keeping the guys in front of him, letting them know that he's back there, right, with a little help, because a lot of times the penetration from the Hornets defenders on the perimeter is lacking because there's nobody back there that can do anything with him. But I also want to see Mark kind of, if he can really amp up diving to the rim, especially with LaMelo. I mean, that's the teasing thing for me, is just how many of those easy buckets can he get in the flow of the offense, or even, getting out in transition. He's able to do that. I've kind of given up on a long 3-point shot or anything like that. I would love to be wrong. I would love to take the over and make some money on that. But until I see it, I can't believe in it with any of these guys, maybe. But we'll see. Maybe a new day in Charlotte for the shooting big man. But yeah, I think obviously defense and the rim protection, right? I mean, that's the main thing that they want to see out of him. But they can do a lot of stuff with Mark and LaMelo out there, and get a couple more ball handlers that can get him some easy shots around the basket. That'd be nice.
So I would like him to do less offensively, because if he's doing less offensively, then he can focus more on being the anchor that they need down low defensively, and leave it to a healthy LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges. I mean, you have so many weapons on the wing on this team that you don't need a lot of your offense going through Mark, except for those offensive rebound putback opportunities, those easy points.
But you want the 3-point shooting big man, though. This has been like your shtick. It's been Stangin. It's been I have a baby. It's been give me a 3-point shooting big man.
I would love that. I don't believe that is what we're going to see from Mark Williams. That's a believe it when I see it kind of thing. And even if it manifests itself, I think it's going to be more of an early Brook Lopez as he made that transition, where maybe have 2 opportunities a game and you're hoping it hits 1. And so that's this season's sort of profile, right? It's not going to be like, oh, we're running stuff so that Mark gets an open 3. It's everything is going through those 3 wing players. And if the paint closes in and things break down, maybe Mark occasionally drifts back to the 3-point line and is open for an opportunity there. So but I hope he does less offensively so that he can focus more on the defensive end and also rebounding. So we've mentioned the offensive rebounding numbers. I wish I could give you exact numbers on the lineups that he was in last season, but it seems like Cleaning the Glass is having some issues with their website. But I do recall that one of the good lineups involved Mark Williams, and their offensive rebounding percentage was like in the 97th percentile for that lineup among 5-man lineups, meaning it was one of the best offensive rebounding percentages among lineups in the NBA. So that's the impact that Mark Williams can have. My question is, can he make that same kind of impact defensively? Defensive rebounding percentage has, I think, lagged that offensive rebounding percentage a little bit. I want to see him be more physical down low, because offensive rebounding is about beating a guy to the spot. It's a little more skill-based. It's a little more luck-based. You can use your length to your advantage in offensive rebounding, because nobody knows where the ball's going. It can go wildly in that situation. You have a little bit of an advantage over the defense, or over the opposing offense, I should say. But in defensive rebounding, so much of it is about, what do we hear Clifford say over and over? Hit a guy first. Physicality, moving guys out of the paint. That has not been a strength for Mark Williams. I hope he's bigger this season. I hope he's stronger this season. I hope he can make that a strength.
Yeah, I also don't want him to lose the athleticism. I think there's a lot of value in, especially when we get to playoff basketball, his rare athleticism on the perimeter for how tall he is. So I don't want, how much weight do you put on him at the expense of the perimeter defense? And then we see guys like Rudy Gobert, even though it's a little exaggerated, getting played off of the floor. Like, if you can still stick with some guys on the perimeter, do the Trae Young block 3-point shot thing, I would love that. The dunks and threes rebounding numbers, by the way, 94th percentile among bigs, offensive rebounding, just ridiculous. We've gone over those numbers. 62nd percentile among bigs, so it's not terrible. It's above average, but it's still not elite level there. So we'll see what happens with Mark once we go to the third season. Any more Mark thoughts? Or are you ready to get to some Nick Richards thoughts, David?
Oh, I'm ready to get to some Nick Richards thoughts. But one quick thing, if you are at Media Day Monday, Walker, Muscle Watch on full display. If you'll let us know if Mark Williams' shoulders are bigger, if he's added some pounds of muscle there, that would be key. Also, this probably has no correlation to anything, but you think about the Celtics and how often Al Horford was in that corner shooting the 3. Now, he's done that for like the last 10 years. And I don't think you can necessarily take things like from Charles Lee in Boston and automatically apply them here. But, if they're bringing any of those principles down here, you could see some corner threes or maybe some trail threes a la Brooke Lopez for Mark Williams. We'll see. If he's serious about that 10 over, I think we got to see some early signs of that in the season. So maybe we'll be able to tell something.
It's happened at every Charles Lee stop. Milwaukee, Brooke Lopez, Boston, Kristaps, Al Horford, Atlanta, Al Horford. Like, it's happened at every single spot. They find a lot of value in shooting threes. So we'll see if Mark, even if he doesn't take a million of them like those guys did, I've always advocated for like the 15-footer to even give LaMelo some space or whatever too. Just allow him to be a threat from a little bit further out. So
going back to Muscle Watch, Walker, when somebody like sort of discreetly holds the phone up to try to get a selfie, but it's like, oh no, I'm just looking at I'm looking. So I need you to do that, but have the ruler app open and see if you can get some measurements on shoulder depth, shoulder length, for him and Brandon Miller. I think those two are especially on Muscle Watch.
The good news is they shouldn't be sweaty because they're not playing a game. So we're not going to get glossy version and then mistake that for Muscle Watch.
No one would do that. No one would do that.
That's not going to happen. No one would ever do that. Nick Richards, real quickly, we saw a tweet yesterday and a write-up on The Athletic from James Edwards. He covers the Knicks, and there was a quote in his write-up. Nick Richards, league sources tell The Athletic, is someone the Knicks have had on their radar this offseason, this coming after Mitchell Robinson is expected to miss the start of this upcoming season. I bring in that quote to start the Nick Richards convo to ask the big question, does he stay on the team the entire year? Because it's not like you have a lot of depth. If the Hornets trade Nick Richards, now you're dealing with like small ball Grant Williams, inexperienced ball Tijan Salon, old ball Taj Gibson, and still injured ball Harry Giles. So if you get rid of Nick Richards in that way, God, like you're getting rid of the most reliable health-wise center that we've had over the last few years, but he's also the guy that's thrown into a bajillion different trade conversations. The big question is Nick Richards going to be on the roster the entire year? What do you think, David?
Oh my God. I don't know how he's not, unless you're getting something back. Like in that scenario, to your point, like what are the Knicks sending back? They don't have any centers, right? They don't have any depth. So how are you adding someone behind Mark Williams, especially if Mark, oh God, I mean, I don't know how they could do that, but you're right. Like he's always thrown in. So like, you guys talked about it a little bit on looking ahead, if depending on how the team is doing, if they want to kind of sneaky tank, I mean, that would be one way to do it, right? Especially if Mark is down, if they want to move on from Nick, get some assets. He's always tossed around, and the thing we don't know about this new regime is how frisky they are going to be with moves like that. Like Mitch and the guys were a little more close to the vest, especially early on. So how quick will this new regime be to kind of move off once something is clearly taken shape in the form of either injuries or wins and losses? So I don't know, but my guess would be not. I'm just going to say no, because he's always tossed into those. He still can get you some value, and it just depending on what else they do. The depth is just terrifying, though, if he's gone.
No, I agree. I think he's on a great contract relative to the production that he can give the Hornets or another team. So I think he's going to continue to be attractive. So he's in the second of a 3-year deal. He's owed it's just $5 million straight, $15 million deal for 3 years. So it's $5 million this year and then $5 million next year. I'm going to say yes, they hold on to him because I think he's going to be very attractive in the final year. I think they could actually accumulate some assets from that deal in the final year. So, but not even just like trading Nick Richards straight up, but packaging him as part of salary cap relief, as part of center production in the final year of that deal. So I think they're going to hold. The only caveat to that is what David said. If there is a fire sale in the middle of the year where they want to get bad, one of the easy ways to get bad is to crush your center depth, because there are always bodies. Like they can find someone. I mean, they can play Taj Gibson, or they could find someone to fill that role. There's always a Nathan Mensah just kind of hanging out there in the G League.
Oh, God.
Ready to be elevated. It's not going to make for a great product to watch, but they can do that. But I hope that it would only be because I've seen some of the deals that people have tried to project for this, and it has the Hornets bringing back like Miles McBride and some other guy I've never heard of, and it's like that. No, the Hornets are not interested in your third string depth pieces, New York. They're interested in assets. I think one deal had the Hornets sending a second rounder. It's like, no, that's not how this works. Nick Richards will be used, if he's used at all, to accumulate more assets for this team.
People love him as a backup center. If you listen to the Bill Simmons podcast, it feels like he might be the most brought up Hornet outside of LaMelo and Brandon. It's LaMelo, Brandon Miller, then it's Nick Richards, like a not so distant third because of, hey, I like that Nick Richards guy down there. Maybe you can trade for him. That's how he's always been discussed.
Well, look, and honestly, I wouldn't be so quick to trade Nick Richards if you are trying to establish Charles Lee, if you're trying to establish a work ethic, if you are trying to establish an attitude, a DNA, whatever you want to call it. Nick Richards has been the manifestation of that already, even in times when the Hornets weren't acting like that as a franchise. He has come in and overplayed his expectations and overplayed his contract year after year. And he's always, he had a few little minor injuries last season that kept him out. But whenever he's in the game, like Big Nick energy is a real thing. Like he has holes in his game too, but he elevates the team when he's on the floor.
He's not hiding a 3-point shot under a bushel anymore, though, right?
Then he'd be super valuable.
He would be. All right, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Stangin or clanging and stat draft. We got to get through this quickly. Coming up next, Locked On Hornets. David, I'm going to give you a heads up again. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time? Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. There are plenty of perks with Game Time. Game Time Picks curation makes it easy to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Whatever you want to save your money on. There's all-in pricing. Toggling this feature will show the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And also you have seat views where you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. Locked On NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
Game time.
More Locked On Hornets ahead. Stangin or clanging? Mark Williams, Nick Richards, a little dabble of like Taj Gibson, Grant Williams, Harry Giles, whatever. Those are the same overlap in the power forward spot. Doug, we'll go with you. This is your game, so we'll let you start this one off. Stangin or clanging? How would you describe the center position?
This is the easiest one. I think it's clanging, unfortunately, because there are so many question marks about health. And Mark Williams, there are games that are tantalizing, right? You've seen 2020 games from him, and you go, wow. And then you dig a little bit deeper into the context, and you start to understand that he's been able to take advantage of opportunities against teams that either play small or have centers that don't really want to tussle inside. And he stepped up to the plate in those matchups, but when he's been faced with bigger centers or bigger lineups, he has struggled a little bit. So I have questions overall about like what Mark Williams' ceiling is. Like, can he be one of the best 5 to 10 centers in the league? I'm not sure of that yet. He could prove that to me with a healthy season this year that's full of production and going up against those matchups and winning those matchups. That would prove it to me. But right now I have no evidence, and we talked about the depth. So yeah, this is the easiest one, clanging.
What about you, David?
Yeah, I think so. It's just so thin there, and so many question marks at the top. You start from the top down, and it's kind of ironic. Like if Mark were to falter again health-wise, you feel like they might just throw the towel in and look to trade people and then go back in the draft next year. I tell you, that Clangin pick that you mentioned, Walker, is going to be kind of fascinating to watch because to your point, like if they were super concerned, maybe they do draft him. There was a lot of talk and a lot of people would have drafted him anyway, because as we talked about during the draft process, like what has Mark Williams done to cement himself as someone you can't draft over? So they didn't go that way. So we'll see, but it'll be something to keep an eye on. And unfortunately right now it's clanging, boys.
It's all relative, right? You said it's the easiest one, Doug, and I'm actually going to go the exact opposite. I'm going to zag while you're zigging. I'm going Stangin.
Oh my God. Unbelievable. It's predictable, but also unbelievable.
That got you angry. Here's why I'm going Stangin. One, if we're worried about the depth at center, then aren't we worried about the depth with every position outside of point guard? Because we can go to the shooting guard, and if center is clearly clanging because of the depth issues, and Doug, I guess with you specifically, you're not as excited about the ceiling for Mark, but shooting guard is Josh Green, and I mean, if we're doing the game right, where we're cementing these,
we said clanging for shooting.
No, I know, but you said it was the easiest one, right? Like you're saying that this was the easiest decision for you to make. So I'm going with shooting guard. We're worried about depth. I'm worried about it at shooting guard more. I'm worried about it with small forward more. Power forward, you have some depth with Grant Williams, but also if you have a guy immediately behind your starter that has proven to be, in some cases, only valuable to the team. In this specific case, you have a backup that's valuable to the entire league. You have a backup that's valuable to these competitors that want center depth to go up there. And if they don't have Mitchell Robinson, or if they don't have Kristaps Porzingis / Al Horford, like maybe Nick Richards is the guy that you make calls for. So I'm going Stangin. And yes, a part of this is because I think that you actually have a better ceiling with Mark Williams. And I don't even know if that means top 5. Like when you talk about Mark Williams struggling with the bigger centers in the league, I also think that's just he struggles with the best centers in the league. Mm-hmm. Like he struggles with Joel Embiid. He struggles with Nikola Jokic. He struggles with Rudy Gobert. Yeah, like those are bona fide all-NBA, and a couple of them have won MVPs. Mark punishing at will the small teams, that's a valuable trait, even if he doesn't ever become a Joel Embiid and or Nikola Jokic. Like, okay, if you want to go small, I'm just going to throw it to the guy that's going to get every offensive rebound. I'm going to throw it to the guy that's going to dunk on you and become one of the most efficient scorers. His OPM when he's out there is ridiculous. Like I like Mark when he's out there. I'm a fan. I think clearly Charles Lee and the Hornets are a fan too. He's got to stay healthy. That's a big reason. If you wanted to point to strictly that as being clanging, I get that. I'm a little scared about that, but I'll zig, baby. I'm going the opposite way.
Just listen. Don't call the Coast Guard when you're stuck on, when you're stuck on the island, when you're stuck on Mark Williams Island. Don't form sticks in the shape of the word help, because help's not coming.
That's fair.
I would need to see more than 19 games to be sure for Stangin. So that would be my one caveat. So I get that, but I'm with you on just dominating your game piece of it, right? Like if he's struggling with the super duper stars in this league at center, I think you can get by with that, especially for this season. You just need him out there, be healthy, and deliver on the nights when you know he has a clear advantage, right? Or at least can play up to his level and give the team an advantage at the center position, which on those nights he more often than not is able to do. So yeah, I'm with you. If he's not keeping pace with the Joker, like I'm not going to kill him for that as long as he's out there.
Hey, just stay out there, baby. That's really it. Please, we just want you to be healthy. That's a legit concern. You ready for the what if game here, Doug? Why don't you set us up?
Doug is just shaking.
Well, because I don't listen. I give my Stangins out very carefully. I don't give my Stangins out on hope and wishes and promises and the fairy dust and all of this stuff. Like I give it based on hard evidence, and I have not seen any hard evidence that this center position is anywhere close to staying. And I appreciate the team actually putting in a modicum of effort in building a center lineup that is NBA worthy. I appreciate that, but it is not anywhere near Stangin. Thus, it is clanging. All right.
Okay.
What if game? Portals open up in Spectrum Center, Avengers Endgame style. Out walks the 2015-16 Charlotte Hornets team, the last team that made an actual legitimate playoff series. And so Charles Lee has some tough decisions to make. He has to figure out who he's going to keep from the 15-16 team and who he's going to keep from the current roster. So that's how we play the game. We've got 3 slots. Out walks Al Jefferson. Out walks Cody Zeller. Out walks Frank Kaminsky. You could throw Frank into the center discussion here as well. And you've got, we've just talked about Mark and Nick. And so the question is, David, who do you start and who are your 2 reserves?
Oh, I think this is easy. I mean, Big Al, he's the professor of the paint. He's
but
going down the house, down low. I understand what style of play, something like that.
Not style of play. Remember, the Al Jefferson that you are getting is the Al Jefferson that Steve Clifford decided to put on the bench for a portion of that season and re-elevated him in the playoff series when they started blitzing Kemba Walker to give them a little bit more of a release valve. But he was a guy that they decided to go kind of a Zeller, a little sprinkle of Frank Kaminsky in there. His minutes were down. His production was down. You were getting not the best of Al Jefferson. You're kind of getting the worst of Al Jefferson.
If you're asking me if I'm playing him over Frank Kaminsky, the answer is yes.
Well, Mark Williams. Are you playing him over Mark Williams?
Well, Mark is clanging. So we got to go Al Jefferson.
I'm not answering yet. I'm just giving David some context here.
Until I can see Mark play at that time of year, reserved to the bench or not, if he's playing in the springtime, I'm still going with Big Al. I think is the body of work and the knowledge that he had in the low post game, even in that season, is worth it for me. And I'm starting him. And then what are the other two? Are the other two just bench role players?
Yeah, just your two bench players.
Oh, it's Mark and God bless Cody Zeller. Get your nose in there. Get your face in there.
Zeller. All right.
You know he's in there, baby. You know he's diving for balls. You know he's throwing that chin around. He's just getting that face in there to take an elbow or two. That's what he did for the team.
Punching bag.
I'm gonna go the other way too. I'm so high on Mark. I'm starting Mark. Look, Al Jefferson, all NBA version, Al has to be the answer. When you're a top 15 player in the league, deservedly so, I'll start you. Remember, this was the year, like, the Hornets decided to pay Nick Batum. They decided to pay Marvin Williams. They decided to pay Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. One of the casualties was Al Jefferson. This was his last year with the team. I didn't realize that he played that low of amount of minutes here, too. Like, he only played 23 minutes per game that season. So with that being known, I'm going to go with Mark, and I like the idea of Mark anchoring the defense, right? If we're just doing a one game against the Monstars, and we have the Hornets All-Stars from this year and 2015-16, and we got to go up against all the aliens that stole all NBA talent, I'm going to go with Mark Williams in a one-game matchup against those aliens, just because defensively is going to help you a lot. I think the athleticism will be there a little more, but I love pairing him with all of the skill that we've accumulated through this what-if draft, having LaMelo, Kemba, Courtney Lee in his 3-and-D role, going with Brandon Miller out there too. And what's nice is he gets to play with these guys in real time. I like Mark bringing it all together and helping you out defensively. I'm starting Mark, and then the bench, Al Jefferson come in, beat up on twos, and Cody Zeller, utility guy. Always utility Cody Zeller. Those are my bench pieces.
Yeah, I mean, if you're giving me a healthy Mark Williams, I've got to take the shot blocker of the group, because I think Steve Clifford would too. I think if this were the reverse what-if game and, this team came from the future back in time to 2015-16 at the beginning of that season, I think Mark Williams could outplay Cody Zeller and may have started on the bench for Al Jefferson, but as they sort of moved him to the retirement home, they would have elevated Mark Williams over Cody Zeller. So, yeah, I've got to take the defensive upside of Mark Williams to start, and then I'm like you. I'm going to fill it out with Cody Zeller and that very punchable face and Al Jefferson, whatever is left of Al Jefferson, because what they were able to do in that series with a little bit more of a rested, healthier Al Jefferson was they were able to use him as a chess piece. And so he was always going to be valuable in that way, so I'll keep him.
Cody Zeller, are we overlooking screen assists in this game against the Monstars?
You always the very nature of screen assists is that you overlook them. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I didn't know. Do we have enough time for the stat draft, or do we just need to call it?
No, very quick. No, this is the final round, and the only two picks because David already made his pick. This is the final round. Let's finish it. I already have mine. I know what my pick's going to be.
Okay, well then you go ahead. You go ahead, because I don't know what mine's going to be. I was not prepared. So go ahead. What is the pick for you?
All right. So last week when we did the position preview for point guards, I talked a lot about LaMelo Ball and his upping his game in terms of his drives. So he went from 2 seasons ago, he drove it like 14-ish times per game. He elevated that to 17 times per game. And that's what really, really, really good all-star level point guards do. But the elite point guards in this league are driving it 20-plus times a game. So I'm going to take drives per game. It was at 17 last season in that small sample size. I'm going to take the over. I think it's going to be even more imperative that he gets that ball going to the basket. And so I'm going to take the over on drives per game for LaMelo Ball at 17.
Wow.
Yeah, I like that answer. Yeah, man, I'm caught with my pants down here. I'm trying to figure out a stat to draft, and this is like the Minnesota Vikings when I'm too late to the podium, and then I have to have my pick taken away, and so I don't get a new player to help my team out.
Well, you should go with something from Mark. I mean, you've just lavished him
I've
with
already had a
praise.
couple. I've had a couple of Mark choices already, so I think I know I have
Big
one.
surprise.
I might have two. Yeah, I feel like those are gonna already be there. I think I have two already. Yeah, give me. Okay, I'm gonna go with Nick Richards, and I'm gonna keep with the theme of the show today. I don't want to be a hater here, but I'm gonna bank on a trade happening. Give me the under on games played at 67.
Oh man,
Hater picks. We need more hater picks. Under 67 games played on Nick Richards, because that's one of the higher marks.
67 games.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. It's one of the higher marks. There's not too many 67 gamers here with the Hornets, so I'll take the under on that.
I gotta tell you, you haven't taken a games played yet, right? This is not breaking the rules.
No, I don't think so. No. This isn't like you got mad at David for taking the games
Curry
played
over
Seth Curry,
which I don't feel great about, to be honest with you. We'll see.
You
shouldn't.
It's like 8 or something, but I don't feel great about it.
Okay, that'll do it. That was a fun show. Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. Thanks to David for helping us out, as always. You can find him on Twitter at David B. Walker, Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com, and Walker Mail on WFNZ every weekday, 12 to 3 with Wes and Walker. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.